Hello and welcome to Pick Yourself, the podcast that helps you build and grow your electronic music career. You will learn the strategies, mindset, tactics, and tools that you can implement today to break through tomorrow. My name is Philip. Now let's get right into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Pick Yourself podcast. This is just a very quick intro episode in which I will give you an overview of what this podcast is all about. So first of all, I'm going to explain who this podcast is for. After that, I will let you know why I have decided to create this podcast in the first place. I will let you know what to expect from the podcast in the future. And then I will give you a little background story about myself. So who is this podcast made for? You're probably finding yourself in one of the following scenarios. You're constantly creating great music, but nobody really seems to care. I mean, you maybe have a little audience, a little fan base, and some plays on Spotify and SoundCloud and all the other platforms. But you don't get real traction. You don't get momentum. Maybe you're asking yourself, how do I get my music in front of the right people? How do I get my tracks to be played by bigger DJs? When do I get my chance to play the clubs that really matter or the festivals that everybody's talking about right now? How do I submit my stuff to labels so they actually give a damn about it? Is it maybe better to start my own label? Should I release 3 EPs a year? A single every month, or maybe a whole album every 2 years? What's the best cycle? And I could go on and on with these types of questions. Now, the good news is that you're definitely not alone with these types of issues. And this podcast was designed to help people like you overcome these obstacles and move towards a career that's actually worth committing to. So why have I decided to start a podcast like this? Well, first of all, I think there's really a lot of shitty advice out there. And I'm sorry I cannot say it in any other way, because what most resources are trying to sell you is short-sighted advice that is probably the latest little Facebook and Instagram hack that you can use, a little loophole here and there to get a little head start. I just don't think that by gaming the system, you get any real advantage in the long run. And a lot of my mixing and mastering clients in the studio were looking for advice in other areas. So they asked me if I can give them any tips on how to bring their career to the next level and what they could do. And I simply wanted to point them to resources, but it got super frustrating by looking at all this crappy advice. So I ended up sketching out something that I felt was truly a good answer to provide them with. Now, the overall goal of this podcast is to help you build and grow an electronic music career that really has an impact. Now, there are 2 different aspects to this. So on the one hand, you need a certain set of business-related skills that I will definitely try to share with you as much as possible. But on the other hand, you also have to create something that is truly meaningful to people. In other words, if you want more attention for your music, you have to create music that deserves this attention in the first place. And I'm convinced that these aspects belong together. And this is why I think they also should be taught together. So in this podcast, we will cover the creative side of things, but also the business side of things, always geared towards the specific struggles that you have. So what can you expect from the podcast in the future? First of all, I will release a new episode every week, and I have 2 different types of episodes. The first type is what I call topic episodes. In these topic episodes, we focus on specific struggles that people like you are facing right now. And I didn't just make these problems up. I actually conducted 6 months of research where I asked my clients, my students, people from my network in the music industry that I've expanded over the last 10 years. And another thing that is super important, in my opinion, is that I give actionable advice. So every topic episode is structured in the following way. We start off with analyzing a problem, then we dive deep into the solutions for it, And then I will leave you with 3 dedicated action steps that you can implement right away after the end of the episode. The second type of episodes is guest interviews. That means I will make my whole network, all my relationships that I've built over the years, available to you. Imagine this like a huge fountain of knowledge that you can draw inspiration and wisdom from. So who are the types of guests that I'm going to interview here? You can expect interviews with high-profile personalities from the global electronic music community, and that includes high-profile artists, DJs, club owners, promoters, PR agents, music journalists, specialized music lawyers, tour managers, basically all the people who make up the vital essence of the global electronic music community. But what's super important to me personally is that those people are not only my buddies that I want to bring on the show. No, these are people that have something to say, that have a unique edge and angle, perspective that you can actually take something from. Just to give you an example, one of my first guests is going to be Christopher Jarman, aka Kamikaze Space Program, a super prolific artist who has basically managed to create a long-term career by reinventing himself several times. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for, unique perspectives on how to create a long-term career and delivering true value to your audience. Now, before we come to the end of this first little intro episode, let me just give you a very brief introduction to myself and my background. So at the moment, I'm running a professional mixing and mastering studio that specializes in electronic music. It's based in Berlin, and it's called Kopilko Productions. Besides that, I'm passing on what I know about music production at a music college called DBS Berlin. I'm a freelance tutor there. I do this a few hours every week. And it's just great to share some of the stuff that I've learned. And this is also one of my motivations behind this podcast. I just enjoy giving some of the things I know away to people. So now I'm making a full-time living off of my mixing and mastering and also the teaching side of things. But what's quite interesting is that I haven't studied anything to do with music before. I've actually lived quite an interesting double life before. So when I got out of school, I started a band, and with this band I've played several hundred shows all across Europe. We were a punk rock and hardcore band, and basically an amazing period with some of the best friends that I will probably ever find in my life. And the cool thing about this time was that everything was 100% DIY. So we did everything ourselves. And this do-it-yourself approach has taught me so many valuable skills that I'm super thankful for that part of my life. I mean, we didn't make any money at the time. We actually spent a lot of money. We've lost so much on every tour that we just invested everything we had into this band, and we were living a shared dream, which was amazing. And this band lasted for about 10 years. And during that time, I also studied a master's in communication science. And then I started working in a marketing agency. I was working there as a strategy consultant, a brand strategist. But I was only doing this 50% of my time. The other 50% went into building the studio that I have now. Now, this was back in Munich. I moved to Berlin later on. But at that time in Munich, I got my first clients. I got a lot of expertise in that field, a lot of training. And at the same time, through the marketing agency, I learned so many valuable skills that have to do with brand building, with advertising, with presenting yourself, that I'm also very thankful for this period, even though it was probably not the thing that I was meant for or made for. So these are two very different but very important streams in my life. On the one hand, the music creation and music production side of things, and on the other hand, the marketing, the branding, the communication side of things. And I enjoyed both worlds, to be honest. It just happens to be the music thing that speaks to me more on an emotional level. But at the same time, I think those skills are super valuable for musicians as well. So if you're interested in getting your music out there, getting in front of people, and actually gaining an audience that you deserve, then I probably have some very good tips for you from both sides, the creative side, but also the marketing side of things. And I think that wraps up our first intro episode. But before you jump to the next one, listen to this. I have put together a little free guide that's called The 7 Strategies of Highly Successful Electronic Music Producers. And this is available for free at pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. Once again, pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. And what I basically did here is I have collected strategies that my most successful studio clients are implementing every day, every week in order to gain and maintain their momentum. So if you're curious, go to pickyourselfpodcast.com/free and get this little guide. And I hope to see you in the next episode. If you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. And you can find show notes to this episode in form of a detailed blog post at pickyourselfpodcast.com. Until then, see you next time.